What's up guys, welcome back to Cars, Costs, and Technology. On today's video we're going to be reviewing the 2019 Corvette ZR1, but before we get started I want to take a moment to give a huge special thanks to the owners of this particular ZR1. They've been extremely kind and patient with me throughout the process of filming this review. Now they did prefer to remain anonymous, but I couldn't help but take just a second to really recognize the major contribution that they made to the channel by allowing me to film and drive such a special car. I really do appreciate it, especially considering that they've asked for absolutely nothing in return for their time. Just a very kind couple. They also allowed me to come out and film the delivery day when the car arrived. I will have a card above if you want to check out that full video, but as you saw, some of the clips in the intro for this video is a really cool, exciting experience. Now I also went out and filmed the paint protection install process for the car, which is a very interesting and fun thing to watch, but seeing the transformation of the car from the time that it rolled off the trailer to where it's at now is just pretty incredible to see all the aero installed and how much more aggressive the car looks. So I'm very thankful to have been a part of that whole process and just wanted to share some of the background story with you guys that I've had with this car so far. Now I'd like to get things started by going over some of my first impressions when seeing the ZR1 fully assembled for the first time. Up until about a month ago or so, I had only seen them in photos and videos online, but I will tell you that it just does not do this car justice. I did everything I could to capture all the angles, but everything from the hood lines to the new front fascia, the wing, the new aero pieces, it just is hard to capture on video and give you the presence that the car has in person. I had seen not only this one, but 3 others while I was in Bowling Green for a racing event, and again, seeing these cars in person after seeing so many of them, a couple different colors and options, this is just an incredible looking car, and the presence is just breathtaking when you see it in person. If you live anywhere near a dealership that has one in stock, I recommend making the trip out there just to check it out. Again, even if it's getting ready to be delivered to a customer, try to get there while you can. If you happen to be at a car show and know that there's one there, take a moment to stop by and look at the car, because in person it looks even better than it does in photo and video, and I'll be the first to say that it looks fantastic in photo and video as well. I'm sure by now you've heard the ZR1 being referred to as the King at least a few times online or even in person, and I want to talk a little bit about why this car holds that title and what that really means. Now, the nickname King of the Hill was originally given to the C4 ZR1 back in the C4 Corvette generation because it represented the top tier C4 Corvette. Obviously it was the top of the food chain at that time. Now the C7 ZR1 really takes things to new heights, as it really surpasses pretty much every Corvette before it in terms of factory or production Corvettes. Obviously we're not talking about modified Corvettes or aftermarket parts being taken into consideration. I'm sure I'm going to get at least a few comments of somebody saying my buddy's Corvette is faster or louder, but when you look at production Corvettes strictly, the ZR1 is the fastest Corvette ever in history with a top speed of 212 miles per hour, and that number is actually really just used for marketing purposes because of the way that the rating system is made. It's actually counting a 2-pass system where they average out together against the wind and with the wind, but the car is actually electronically limited at 215 miles per hour due to the tire rating. Some say that if the tires were rated to go faster, the car is actually capable of going even higher than 215 miles an hour, and when you look at the footage of GM doing their top speed testing, the car is just shy of that 215 number, so it is actually capable of going above 212. Not that anyone is concerned that 212 just isn't quite enough for them. Also keep in mind that is without the larger wing or the ZTK package, which increases the drag and reduces the top speed by just a little bit. Now moving on, it's also the quickest Corvette in history with a 0 to 60 time of 2.85 seconds, and again this kind of ties back to the tire technology. If the tires were able to put more of that power to the ground, it probably could launch much quicker than 2.85 seconds in a 0 to 60 time, but that is still extremely quick, and considering this is a rear-wheel drive car with very wide tires but not the widest out there, it's pretty impressive. It's also the most powerful Corvette ever in history with 755 horsepower and 715 pound-feet of torque. All types of cooling improvements as well on the ZR1 to help make that sustainable and give it much better longevity on the track than the Z06 had. It's the most advanced aerodynamics ever fitted to a Corvette. With the optional ZTK package, you're looking at up to 950 pounds of downforce at top speed, so very incredible downforce and aerodynamic technology incorporated in the ZR1. It's the most carbon fiber ever used on a production Corvette. Now I know this sounds kind of like an odd stat, but not only is it functional in terms of it being lightweight and very rigid and strong, but it is extremely striking in person. It just looks so great. When you look at the supercharger cover and the heat extractor on the hood, as well as the front splitter, the rear spoiler, these massive carbon fiber items really stand out and catch your attention, and I love the way it looks. I wish that more Corvettes had a little more carbon fiber, but I know it's such an expensive material. But again, this car is completely drenched in carbon fiber. Now unfortunately, with a spec list like the ZR1s, there are a few drawbacks. Some examples include it is also the heaviest production Corvette ever in history, as well as the most expensive production Corvette ever. Now both of those two drawbacks can be overlooked pretty easily when you consider that the power to weight ratio is still phenomenal and the best ever in history, with the additional horsepower and cooling improvements and things that they've done. The weight is very slim over the Z06, but all the improvements that they've made, it's more than capable on the track and is blowing away lap time records all over the place, which leads us back to the price point and why that price point is justified. This car has taken away production car lap time records from numerous very expensive vehicles, including the Ford GT, the Dodge Viper ACR, and I'm sure there are more to come. Right now, the Corvette ZR1, even though it's only been out as a production car for a couple months now, it actually holds the production car lap time record at VIR as well as NCM Motorsports Park and Road Atlanta, and I'm sure there are more to come soon. I was hoping that the Nürburgring lap time would be released by the time I put this review together, but unfortunately it is not as of the time of this recording, but I'm looking forward to seeing what the time is there. Again, I think there are plenty more track records that are going to fall at the ZR1's hands. Now, while we're on the topic of the ZR1 and its track capabilities, I also wanted to point out that, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I was out in Bowling Green, Kentucky a couple weeks ago, and I actually had the opportunity to film a ZR1 out on the track in the NCM Motorsports Park. The car sounded and looked fantastic out on the track, so definitely check that footage out if you want to see the ZR1 in its natural habitat and really doing what it's meant to do. Obviously, in this review, I'm out on public roads with a car that's not even fully broken in yet, so nowhere near pushing the limits of the car where it's cool to see it on the track and a little more of what the car is actually capable of. Now, if you're a ZR1 owner or thinking about purchasing one and you want to take the car to the track, I want to show you some pretty unique costs of ownership involved with the ZR1 that some are shared with other C7 Corvettes, but some are unique to the ZR1 that I found to be pretty incredible, especially coming from a Stingray owner. Some of these costs involved were pretty astonishing to me, but again, for the performance that you're getting, it's well worth it. Now, the first thing that we're going to look at is the brakes. The C7 ZR1 is the only C7 Corvette to come standard with the carbon ceramic rotors. It's also got larger pads and calipers to go along with that, but I thought that it was pretty crazy that the rotors on this car cost approximately $3,000 each in the event that you need to replace them. The carbon ceramic rotors are very durable, don't get me wrong. They could actually last the life of the car and under normal driving conditions, but they are very fragile, so if you're getting the tire changed or the pads changed or debris from the road were to hit and chip the rotors, they could need to be changed out. Also, some Corvette forum members that own C7 Z06s with the Z07 package or even Grand Sports with carbon ceramic rotors have actually said under heavy track use they have to replace them after about 10 to 15 track days, or maybe even less if they weren't broken in properly. So found it really interesting that these cost so much and they actually could need to be replaced multiple times throughout the lifetime of the car, depending on how you're driving it and obviously how well it was broken in. So definitely keep that in mind if you're thinking about purchasing a ZR1 for track use. The next potential cost of ownership that I'd like to discuss on the ZR1 is not necessarily a given, but is very highly probable depending on how you're driving the car. Now, the ZR1 is the only C7 model that comes standard with a large carbon fiber front splitter, and this costs $2,300 to replace if you were to damage it. Now, at the time of this recording, there are pretty much no aftermarket options available, so you would be looking at going directly to GM to replace it, and this does not include the cost of labor or anything like that, but this is an extremely expensive piece, obviously because it's very intricate and it's made completely of carbon fiber. But it is standard on the ZR1 whether you get the ZTK package or not, you are going to have this large front splitter. Now, it does look incredible on the car, but obviously with it being very low to the ground and protruding far from the front fascia, it's definitely a piece that you need to be very careful of. And to me, this alone would make the 3ZR package worthwhile because it comes with the front curve view cameras to help make sure that you're not going to scrub this on a curb or hit it anywhere. Definitely a worthwhile feature that I would have on my ZR1. Otherwise, I'd be very uneasy about driving it around town or anywhere that's difficult to maneuver. The next cost of ownership that we're going to discuss for the ZR1 is unfortunately completely inevitable, and that's the gas guzzler tax. No matter how you equip your ZR1, you're looking at a $2,100 gas guzzler tax, which I've ranted about in a previous review, and I'm not going to go down that path, but I'm sure all of you will agree with me. It's very frustrating to see thousands of dollars being spent in a tax just because of the fuel economy on your vehicle when you're already going to be spending additional money in fuel. So very frustrating to see there. I hate to see owners of this car being penalized like that just because of the performance they want in their car. On all other C7 Corvettes, it is avoidable. The C7 Z06 has a gas guzzler tax of $1,300 if you equip the car with the 8-speed automatic transmission, but the manual variant slides under the radar and is able to avoid the gas guzzler tax. But again, with the ZR1, it is the only C7 that comes standard, and no matter how it's equipped is going to be taxed with that fee. Now, as far as the actual fuel economy goes on this car, I've heard many owners saying that they're getting upwards of 24-25 miles per gallon when cruising on the highway or around town, so that's pretty impressive considering it's got 750 255 horsepower. But make no mistake, when this thing is full throttle and in the right zone, it is able to burn through fuel like no other. They've actually stripped out a lot of the fuel saving features that the LT4 and LT1 have in the Stingray or Grand Sport and Z06, where the LT5 and the ZR1 is made completely for performance, and they've gotten rid of a lot of those fuel saving features like the eco mode. They've also removed the active fuel management, where the cylinders drop from 8 down to 4 for fuel economy. They've removed the shift lockout from the 1 to 4 for the manual transmission ZR1s. So, you know, they've removed a lot of these features. In addition to that, they've supplemented the fuel supply with a port injection to go along with the direct injection that the rest of the C7 Corvettes use. So you've got additional fuel supply. You've removed out a lot of the fuel saving features, and like I said, this thing can burn through some gas. But I feel like that's the right decision to make for a car like this. You know, you don't buy a car like this for you know, a bunch of miles per gallon on the highway or even around town. This is for performance and track capability. So I think that they made the right decision to really focus on the performance and not cave in and try to, you know, just appease the fuel economy numbers, but really make this car all about performance. And the limited quantity of ZR1s that are being sold, and I'm sure the limited amount of miles that those cars are seeing, it's not really that big of an impact. I think that owners should be able to feel really the full performance and power of the car without being restricted by all kinds of fuel economy minutia and the politics behind that. Next up, we're going to talk about the pricing of the tires for the ZR1, because obviously with this amount of power, you could be going through sets of tires pretty frequently. But believe it or not, the cost on these tires is actually somewhat underwhelming compared to all the other really expensive standard equipment that the ZR1 comes with, because these tires are actually shared with the Grand Sport and the Z06. Depending on how you equip your ZR1, you could be getting the standard Michelin Pilot Super Sport tires, which will run you about $1,750 for a new set, not including shipping, handling, mounting, balancing, things of that nature, but just the rubber alone will cost you that. If you go the optional ZTK package, you're looking at the Michelin Pilot Super Sport Cup 2 tires, which are just a hair less since they're not quite as versatile tires, but a little more track focused. So again, these tires are very expensive, but considering that these are also the optional tires that are found on a even base model Grand Sport, on the ZR1, they don't look quite that bad in comparison to the other costs involved with owning this car. Do keep in mind that the ZR1 does come with wider front wheels than the Z06 or Grand Sport, but considering that they actually just stretch the same size tire over the wheel to fit, just to change the angle of the sidewall a little bit for handling capability, you're not really looking at any differences as a ZR1 owner from the Grand Sport or Z06 in terms of purchasing tires and one that's going to run you. Now, the final cost of ownership that I want to discuss for the ZR1 is insurance premiums, and this seems to be a crowd favorite, but unfortunately I believe the quote I received from my insurance company is incorrect. I tried it twice and got the same number. It's actually quoting me at just around $130 a month for me to insure the ZR1, and obviously that's for my specific circumstances. I just turned 26 years old and have no tickets or accidents on my record, but I feel like that's definitely wrong considering I've received quotes for cars that are far less valuable with less horsepower that actually was a higher premium. So something just seems to be off about that quote. I don't know exactly why they would quote me less than it actually should be, but I believe it's an error, so take it with a grain of salt. Now, I did confirm that Chuck's Corvette ZR1, his premiums are very similar to that, so maybe it is legitimate. I don't know. Again, I tried it multiple times and it came up the same number, so I'll pass that number along to you guys. But remember, your quote could be completely different depending on where you live and how you'll be driving the vehicle, as well as your driving record and some other factors as well. But I found it interesting that it seemed to be so affordable for me to insure this car. So now that we've talked about a lot of the specs and performance figures on the ZR1, as well as gone over a lot of the interesting costs of ownership on a car like this, I want to go ahead and share with you guys what it's like to be behind the wheel of this beast. Now, there are a few things that stood out to me initially, and I want to start with the transmission feel. To preface this, I will admit I'm extremely excited for the next generation Corvette because I'm hopeful to see a dual clutch transmission. I'd like to see some faster shift points and what that would enable the Corvette to be capable of, but I have to say the ZR1 transmission feels phenomenal, much better than the tuning in the rest of the C7 Corvette lineup, even though it's the same 8-speed auto. Going into this review, I thought for sure that the 8-speed auto was going to be kind of the Achilles heel of the ZR1 and that it really should have had a dual clutch transmission transmission or the 10-speed auto from the Camaro ZL1, but whatever they've been able to do with the tuning feels phenomenal. And I have driven, obviously I own a 2016 Corvette Stingray, for those of you that are familiar with my channel, but I have just recently reviewed a 2019 Corvette Grand Sport with the 8-speed auto. In the past, I've reviewed a 2016 Corvette Z06 with the 8-speed auto, as well as a 17 Z06 with the manual 7-speed transmission. So I have a really good feel for all the different C7 Corvettes, as well as the different transmission options and how they feel in each car, and this hands down felt the best by far. It's hard to describe and it's even hard to showcase in a video, but the shift points were very fluid. So definitely I'm extremely optimistic about the 8-speed auto now after feeling the tuning that they have in the ZR1. I don't know if it's even something that they could do on the other C7 models, but this feels great and definitely has a great way of delivering the power. I also wanted to point something out for those of you that are inevitably going to comment on this video and say, oh, the 8-speed auto is terrible, should never get a Corvette with an automatic transmission. The 8-speed auto not only is faster than the human can actually shift in the manual variant, but the manual variant actually has torque reduction in the first 3 gears just to protect those gears, being that this much power and torque is really difficult for even a very experienced driver to put down to the ground through the manual gearbox efficiently. Another thing that really surprised me about the ZR1 is just how calm and refined it is when you want it to be. In touring mode, it really felt super comfortable and inviting on the roads. You would never think that you're driving in a 755 horsepower, basically race car looking Corvette. Based on how comfortable it is in the interior, you got all your creature comforts there, so this is not some stripped down race car with no radio or AC or anything like that. So it's just overall a pretty incredible package. Obviously there's a ton of power here, but as I mentioned earlier in the video, this car is not fully broken in yet, so I wasn't able to really tap into that, nor did I want to end up in a ditch or in jail. So I may do another follow-up video, as the owner did suggest that we could possibly get back together, and this may not be the last time that I'm seeing this ZR1, as I've grown quite fond of it and attached to it, being that I've watched it be delivered and paint protection and now filming it for the review. So who knows, we may do another follow-up video when the time is more appropriate and it's safer to actually experience more of the full power of this car. But for now, you know, I could definitely tell that it's a very, very capable car, plenty of power, very responsive, very refined, and overall just an incredible package. I'm super excited that I had the opportunity to get behind the wheel and just experience it, as well as film the car all together. I will say, as a conclusion for me, this is definitely what represents the best of everything that the C7 Corvette lineup has offered thus far. It's almost like they've taken all of the good points from every single different C7 and removed any of the bad points. You know, they have definitely refined so much on this car. It felt very polished, so it's a proper send-off for the C7 Corvette generation. I'm so excited to see how the C8 Corvette will possibly contend with this and what they'll be able to do to really top this, or if it can't even be topped for years to come. It's going to be interesting to see, because this is definitely the ultimate front engine Corvette. I don't know if they'll be able to push this chassis or platform any farther than the ZR1 has been taken to. But I'm extremely thankful that I had the opportunity to experience this car, as it is truly special, and I have a newfound respect for it, as I've always admired the ZR1, but after spending some time with it, I can certainly see where this is just a whole nother level, and I'm very proud to say that this is a Corvette. As a Corvette enthusiast, this sits at the top of the throne for the Corvette lineup and really shows every other brand, every other competitor, manufacturer out there, what Corvette stands for and what this car is actually capable of. So to answer the question, the title of this video, yes, absolutely, the ZR1 is 100% worthy of the crown. This is the King Corvette, and I'm so excited to see what the future holds with a car like this. I know we are headed in a great direction. But anyway, guys, I hope that you enjoyed this review. I had a great time filming it. Definitely give this video a like if you did enjoy it, and share it with any friends who may enjoy it as well. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Have a great day.